and they Googled biohazard symbol. And then they printed it out on a piece of printer paper, folded it up, and glued the biohazard symbol to one of the doors of a storage unit in the storage facility.
They did that.
That is what they did to make this set, quote, set, seem to be a government building.
Welcome to the O Podcast, where the movies suck and the jokes don't matter. That's right.
This is the late night smooth old podcast, where we talk about movies that suck, but we do so in a more low-key, quiet way, because we don't want to wake anyone up.
Yes, tonight's selection is going to be Rise of the Undead.
And guess what? It sucked.
Flee or face the creature inside. Did you ever watch Day of the Dead and just think, I want to see this, but if Brad Jones directed it?
Well, I didn't ever watch Day of the Dead and think that, but I could see while watching Day of the Dead how a Brad Jones type person would make a ripoff of it that I wouldn't want to see.
Oh no, my $2 DVD got condensation from your water on it, and now the inside paper.
Yeah, but that's good because
it's ruined.
Well, it's good because that makes it more likely that it'll be like destroyed.
Well, it's a piece of shit.
Never
anyway.
watched by anyone again.
Oh.
Anyways, so we introduced a little motif in our podcast that was only explored once. And so we're like returning to it now.
Because we're out of ideas.
That's not true.
Yeah,
Actually, we
right.
had new ideas, but we're
returning.
We're going back to
old.
topic of the week.
Yeah, we decided that we don't actually have any more movies that we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, and
which kind of begs the question about what movies have we watched recently that we just feel aren't worth mentioning at all? And to beg the question, when is a movie not even worth mentioning at all?
yeah, and before we get to that question,
Yeah.
I was gonna say like topic of the week is really good to do when the feature movie that we're talking about doesn't have much to say about it, which describes this movie. But anyways, no, so. Yeah, I'm gonna let you take this one from the beginning because I've been kind of like casing it.
No,
I kind of cased the last review.
You did
a little bit, but
you did. It's okay. I didn't. I think I did. You didn't. It's
yeah,
fine.
but this is the topic you came up
fine.
with.
Whatever. Okay. Well,
I just need you to take the lead, and then I'll just riff off whatever you say
right.
because the topic is okay. This is the only reason because the topic that we decided on for this episode is like, when is a movie not even worth mentioning?
Okay, well, let me explain where that question came from. Because we were texting back questions that we should like discuss, and one of the questions was like when is a movie unreviewable?
Which we also need to discuss at some point. But
And then I just texted back, when is a movie not even worth mentioning at all? And so like throughout these reviews, we've been mentioning other movies that like,
right.
whose fate became the cutting room floor of our podcast that no one listens to. So, but like they were mentioned, but like when is a movie just so bad or just so much nothing that you just don't even mention it? Like when is it just not worth even like bringing up? Or is there a movie you've seen recently that you just like didn't even tell me about because it was so like stupid or boring or just nothing?
yeah, and
Or just empty.
Immediately a couple things come to mind, and like, look, it's funny that the question is when is a movie not worth mentioning, because there's a movie I'm thinking of but it was so bad and so forgettable that I can't remember of the title of it, so I can't even mention it because I don't know what it's called.
Well, then that begs the question: is a movie that you can't remember the title of not worth mentioning?
Well, I was gonna say this is not worth mentioning, but I have to mention it because we're talking about things that are not worth mentioning,
Yes,
so
exactly.
it's kind of meta. But like when we were so Jonathan and I had an absolutely like miserable experience like about a week ago when we literally tried like 4 times to find a reviewable movie and could not find one. And like one of those 4, I do not remember the title, but we had watched a movie. We watched like a month before this miserable night of 4 attempts. We watched a movie that was like a horror anthology, and like the wraparound story was just these like kind of like chunky middle-aged people sitting on a sectional couch like talking.
Yeah, but we mentioned that in the review.
Yeah, but no, I'm not saying that movie was unmentionable. I'm saying
Oh, okay.
I'm kind of setting up what I'm talking about. I'm saying about a week ago we like literally sampled like 4 different movies trying to find something to review. And there was a movie, one of those 4 reminded me of a movie we watched a month prior to that, which was just people on a sectional couch talking as a wraparound story for an anthology
I
film.
remember.
But this one was like the same thing, but it wasn't an anthology movie. It was like the whole movie was just like chunky middle-aged people on a sectional couch talking. And like I remember like thinking while we were watching the first 15 minutes, I was like, okay, I'm reminded of that piece of shit who from a month ago whose title I also can't remember. And then this one is just like that stretched out for an entire movie instead of just being a wraparound story. And like I just remember thinking like not only is this unreviewable, like there's like literally nothing to say about this. Because all it was people sitting and talking about nothing. And like it had the pretense of being a horror movie, but I don't remember a single horror element in the 20 or so minutes that we made it through. And then we just turned it off. And like if Jonathan had not brought up the topic of when is a movie not worth mentioning, I would not have talked about it at all again ever. So there's an example. And that's one thing I think of. And I had another hypothetical example that I'll get into later, but I want you to bounce off whatever I just said.
I mean, well, that movie is just forgettable, though. Like, it's
not worth mentioning either.
Yeah, but
because that was your
that's
question.
my thing.
It's
Is
like, when is it not worth mentioning? That was not worth mentioning.
But is that like a defining thing? Like, is a movie that's just forgettable not worth mentioning? But is there a movie? I guess what I was kind of trying to dig at was like, is there a movie that isn't necessarily forgettable, but that you just don't even think is worth mentioning? But you're right. I guess a forgettable movie is not worth mentioning.
Well, yeah, and somebody who will go, unnamed for this, but someone close to us famously said once, I either like movies that are very good or very, very bad. And that's actually kind of a profound quotation when you think about it, because there's this vast territory of movies in between the very good and the very bad, and many of them you instantly forget them once they're over. There are no memorable characters in them. There's just nothing. There's nothing in it that you haven't seen before. There's no vision to it. Like, you just have maybe a director who's just going through the motions, and it's just a complete mediocrity that makes no impression on your mind at all. And you could literally watch this entire movie and there's just not remember anything about it the next day.
Well, it's funny because I had a movie experience somewhat recently like that, but the movie is called Cuties. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
The controversy behind that. The only reason why I remembered that movie the next day is because of the controversy. I watched that thing and was like really, really just bored. And then it ended. And then I was like, well, that wasn't as bad as what people said. And and then I don't even think I mentioned that I watched it to you.
No, you didn't.
So there's movies like that that are just like, well, it tried, but like just didn't do anything for me. I mean, maybe it spoke to other people, and
Yeah, and I think like the volume of movies that aren't worth mentioning, it becomes greater like when you're like avid movie watchers like you and I are. Like the more movies that you watch, the more of them fall into the category of like I'm never going to think about this again when it's over. I'm just not going to waste any more of my life like
yeah, and
considering or thinking about this movie. It is what it is. It's mediocre. It's forgettable. It didn't do anything interesting and it sucks. But it's not bad enough to like cause me pain, and it's not good enough to make me remember anything about it. So fuck it. Let's just let it like slip into, you know, the void, the oblivion of like
yeah, and I mean it's
lost.
like, but there are some movies where I'll see like, oh yeah, I watched this. It was all right, and that's like my reporting to you. But like, I can't even.
Yeah.
But like even like avoiding that, like to avid movie viewers like us, like that. I mean, usually like if we watch a movie, we at least say something to the other person. But there's some movies that are just so like boring, and it's just like, ugh.
Do you
I
know what I
have to
think?
do this and this and that. I might as well not even mention it to the other person.
Do you know what I think one factor is that kind of like contributes to so many movies like this existing? Is that like movie making has changed so much in the past like 30 years or so that like it's just so incredibly easy to make a movie now in a way that
Well,
it didn't
yeah.
used to be.
Also, it's just a dime a dozen now. It's like, oh, Graham, I watched this slasher movie. It's not, I went to the theater to see the new Friday the 13th in 3D because it was the only slasher movie playing
Yeah.
this year. Now it's like, well, I watched like 10 slasher movies that were on Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, and Showtime, and all these program channels. And it's like, there's just so many options to the point where there's nothing really that special anymore when you
Yeah.
scope out, really. I mean, of course there are, but it's nothing. It's not like it used to be where there's just like really not that many movies made because you're right, they're just people didn't have the means to pick up a DVR camera or whatever and just go around filming a movie.
Yeah,
Or on their iPhone or
putting
whatever,
together a
yeah.
movie used to be like an incredibly like involved process, and even if you were making something like very low budget, you still needed to have a full crew, and sometimes it would take months to put it together. I mean, it was just like a more arduous process, and
I'm glad it's not like that though, because I think it's given a voice to so many people who deserved it.
I think it's a yin yang thing. I mean, it's
Oh
good and
yeah,
it's bad because
it's a double-edged sword for
yeah,
sure.
because if movie making were still this very like arduous, involved process, then you wouldn't get so many productions that just seem to be created by people who just don't give a shit. Who
Yeah, but
like
then you have movies like Tangerine that was shot on an iPhone, but it was like an amazing film. But that wouldn't have been created before.
well, that's why I said it's
Yeah,
like a
it's
yin
like,
yang thing.
yeah,
There's good
no,
and
but
there's bad to it.
so I'd almost prefer to see movies like Tangerine and, a Shane Carruth movie or something like that, and just have those available to me and sift through the garbage that I sift through all the time to find those movies.
Yeah.
So
But
I
I
think
think
it's worth it.
it's made and another thing I've noticed is that like in decades ago, when a bad movie came out, often like a lot of bad movies from the 70s and 80s are like uniquely bad. Whereas like a lot of the bad stuff that we watch now, it's like uniformly bad. It's like bad in the same way because you have these people with no talent and limited resources who are just doing this, like they're just like using the same gimmicks. And like we can see it like right off the bat. Like often like the first few minutes we're like, we know what these people are going to be doing. It's going to be people fucking sitting on a floor and standing for most of the movie, and they had like one like cheap set that they rented for a weekend. Believe me, this is foreshadowing right now. But like we can like the bad movie gimmicks that are seem to be like really common today are like very like standard and uniform. Like you just see it just used over and over again.
And you also see more of those movies.
Whereas
too.
like in bad movies like in the 70s and 80s, they were kind of like crazy. Like there was like a craziness to some of them because it was like people who were like totally inept and didn't know what they were doing, but they had to go through that arduous process of putting a film together, which like made the ineptitude more like surreal. Whereas now it's just like you've got some like asshole with a digicam and like who rented a, you know, something, you know, he just rented some space and then got his friends together, and then most of it is just people standing around.
Also, I don't know if this has anything to do with it because I'm tired, but
We still have a review to do.
I
This is
know.
just our topic of the night.
Well, think about like a Heaven's Gate, like, you know, like when you look at a company like Disney, you know, back in like the 90s or even before that, Disney would make like what, a movie every year or two. Like they would have their big Disney movie. I think I know Touchstone was a thing. They had like, but like cartoon wise, they had like their one cartoon they would release a year.
Right.
And it was their major release. And if like The Lion King failed at the box office, they're kind of fucked. But now they have like 10 million different Disney things. They have Disney Plus. They release stuff all the time. If one of them is a Heaven's Gate failure, like, what was that new Robert Downey Jr. movie that completely bombed? Like Doolittle? Like a multi-million-dollar movie that just bombs. I mean, it's okay because they have like 10 other releases that'll do fine. So,
Yeah.
so now it's just like, whatever. That failed, but we have like, you know, the money left over from the Avengers, so it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, movies have really become, you know, kind of like an assembly line product for the most part.
They really have, and
Even bad movies, and that's the sad part. Is like that's how we get into a scenario where we can click on 4 different movies that we know are going to be bad, and then it's like they turn out to all be bad in the same depressing way.
yeah, but at the same time, like, it's not like the assembly line thing is all that new. Like, look at, you know, all these horror movies series like Halloween or Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, they're all kind of
That's
cookie
true.
cutter
That's
and,
true.
you know.
But if you really think about those series, like there's a lot of debate amongst fans of those series about which sequels are the best and which are the best.
Yeah, there's a
written and
more
most
variety.
interesting.
Like, you know, like Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is batshit insane and fun, but like maybe 4 just sucked in a different way. And then, you know,
Yeah.
they all are, they kind of have their own different, you know, signatures.
Yeah,
if you
and
will.
like I'm kind of a fan of the Hellraiser series. I mean, I've always liked it, but like after like the 3rd movie, most of them aren't that good, but it's still like a diverse.
I don't think I've seen anything after the 3rd one.
I mean, you kind of have to like be into like the mythology of it to really give a shit, but like even if you are, you will notice there's like more of a diversity amongst those sequels. Yeah, I mean, yeah, most of them are kind of mediocre, but they are different films, and they're not just like retreading the same ground over and over and over again. So,
yeah, but like, it's not like now where it's like, oh, the new Saw movie is out, which, like, look, I love the Saw movies with all my heart, but like those movies are very cookie cutter compared to any of the, you know, 80s or even 90s horror movies series. You know, it gets just more like formulaic and
yeah, and look, I have to do this because this is the old podcast, so I have to like make a reference to something we've reviewed before. But it's been mentioned. I think it was mentioned in the episode itself, and then like one subsequent episode, that Surviving the Outbreak actually has a prequel or a movie that came, like the director who made Surviving the Outbreak preceded that with something called Into the Outbreak. And like Jonathan and I have discussed, like, should we bother like watching this and trying to review it? And we can, but my feeling about it is it's probably just going to be like the same shit as Surviving the Outbreak. Yeah, because we already know from Surviving the Outbreak, which is the sequel, we already know that the director doesn't have any talent. There was zero like interest factor or competency there. I mean, it was really just like a guy just like filming some bad actors sitting on a floor. And like what I really like, honestly, my prediction, I would put money on it that whatever movie he made prior to that about a zombie outbreak is just going to be the same shit.
No, yeah, it's
and
really
it's
just going to be
probably not worth mentioning.
Especially, I mean, it's a year apart, I think, or even probably less. I mean, how much time has that guy really grown as a filmmaker from Surviving the Outbreak?
The chances that the chances that this guy made like a great low budget zombie movie and then went on to make Surviving the Outbreak a year later, which was a boring piece of shit. I mean, the chances of that are like fewer than 1%. Lower, less than 1%, whatever, less, fewer, whatever.
It's like going into the next Terrence Malick movie and thinking that it's actually going to be like worth watching.
Well, I don't hate Terrence Malick. I actually never saw Tree of Life. I saw parts of it.
It wasn't as bad as what people said. It was alright. He's made worse since.
I'll have to watch it. I like Badlands. I like his early movies, but...
Yeah, well, I'm mainly talking about, like, I'm back, and I'm here to stay, Terrence Malick, who suddenly decided to not have hiatuses during his films.
Thin Red Line, or whatever it was called, was one of the worst...
Well, that was boring.
That was one of the worst war films I've ever seen. Oh. So, yeah, I'm not a Terrence Malick fan.
But I liked Night of Cups, alright.
I don't think you could say about any of his movies that they're not worth mentioning. You could just say, like...
There's actually one that I can't... There was one that had... I forget what it was, but I watched some of it, and it had, like, records on the cover. I think it was made, like, before Night of Cups or right after Night of Cups, and it was so not worth mentioning. Oh, and To the Wonder wasn't worth mentioning.
Dude, I feel like
he's made a lot of movies not worth mentioning.
I feel like the type of people who love Terrence Malick movies are just like turtleneck wearing like Manhattanites who listen to like really boring jazz and like drink like chai tea. And like
I like chai tea.
No, but I mean, like,
you know what I'm
talking
about? Cups. No, but I really love.
Oh, you like Night of Cups? I thought you said that wasn't worth mentioning.
No, I liked that one. There was another one that was before or after that wasn't worth mentioning.
Okay, well, you can see
There's
like
a couple I like.
How paltry my knowledge of Terrence Malick's recent output is, because I don't even know what Night of Cups is. I've never even heard of it. So.
It's just about Christian Bale being rich and a drunk and fucking random women the whole movie. And there's like really beautiful imagery, and there's like a shot of a pelican. Honestly, I don't know.
Well, you're always going to get... Well, look, it's Terrence Malick. You're always going to get beautiful imagery no matter what. But
that wide-angle lens, man. Ooh. It just gets you so hard.
Honestly, why doesn't like
lens?
Seriously, Terrence Malick should just like make music videos and just stop making films, and then he'd be like widely celebrated. But
well, I always thought like if you watch Tree of Life on like DMT or something, I bet it's an amazing experience. If you just like,
No, Jonathan, I'm not doing it.
Oh, come on.
All right. Anyways.
Come on, there's like dinosaurs and like space imagery. Come on. It kind of honestly is like doing DMT.
I do want to watch it. I want to watch it, but I also want to get to our movie review.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how we got into Terrence Malick, but...
Yeah, because we're kind of going off topic now. Because we're talking about unmentionable movies, and I don't think you can find a Terrence Malick movie that's, like, not worth mentioning.
Yes, I can. Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah, but then if
Let
you
me
mention
Google
it, then you're...
No, I have to find it, because there was one.
How far into this review are we?
I don't know, but... Oh, this guy looks like an asshole. I don't even think I've seen a picture of Terrence Malick until now, and he looks like a complete dick. Wait, hold
He
on.
kind of looks like a lame white guy who, like, wants to, like, go on a
Oh,
safari
no.
or something. I don't know.
He made a new movie called The Way of the Wind. That's
Yeah, okay,
like
that already
really...
sounds like something
That's
I don't want
bad.
to see or talk about.
Not The New World. It's not the one I'm
I
thinking
like
of.
the New World.
That's not the one. Song to Song. That movie. Yeah, the one with the record. I watched it because it had Ryan Gosling and Rooney Mara and Michael Fassbender and Natalie Portman and Kate Blanchett. And I thought it was going to be good. And then I watched it and was bored to tears. And the imagery was like, all right, but not even as like good as his.
Wow, so he assembled like an all-star cast and just made something like boring and unwatchable. Okay.
Hey, what's this? A Hidden Life.
Jonathan, we're supposed to be...
Oh, I heard about that. Anyway, yeah, we have a movie to talk
Rise
about.
of the Undead and all that.
Ugh, okay.
I'm sure when we get a certain special guest, the subject of Terrence Malick films will be most appropriate.
Dude, if Keith tries to say that Thin Red Line is on par with, like...
No, that was one of the worst World War II films I have ever seen.
If he tries to, like, say that and, like, Full Metal Jacket are in the same caliber, I'm gonna lose my shit on air.
Well, you just have to say you're wrong and explain why.
I stand by that Full Metal Jacket is, like, the best war movie I've ever seen. Platoon is close. So is Apocalypse Now, but, like...
Yes, but what about 1917?
Oh.
Which you haven't seen yet.
Which I still haven't seen because it looks like a run-of-the-mill war film. Yeah.
All right, now we need
Anyway.
to talk about Rise of the Undead.
I'll bash that movie some other time. Anyway, so...
What? You're baiting
I'm
me.
being a dick, I know.
I haven't seen it yet.
I'm sure it's okay.
God.
I'm sure it's okay. Anyway, so we got this
Hi,
movie.
I'm Jonathan. I base my opinions of movies on trailers that I don't like.
There's just certain movies that I see trailers of, and I'm just like, that looks boring, and then you say, oh, it's amazing.
Dude, you know
and
I
then
do
everyone
not...
else says it's amazing, and then I just don't believe
You know I
any
don't
of you.
watch trailers, like, ever. I refuse to watch them.
Well,
Because I think it
I
creates a false
understand.
impression of the movie.
For some movies, I get it, but like...
Because usually the people who edit trailers are not anybody who is actually involved in the movie. And I think that immediately makes it a dishonest representation of what's in it.
Well, yeah, and trailers can be deceptive. I mean, and those people are hired to make the movies look good, and they're told to cut the trailers in certain ways, so...
Dude, by the way,
believe you.
I'm just proving something right now. What I'm proving right now is I'm continually diverting, like, Jonathan because he does not want to talk about the feature film.
I don't want to do it, but...
That's why we talked about Terrence Malick for 15 minutes, and now we're, like, talking about trailers. Like, okay, we got to talk about the Rise of the Undead.
Okay.
Okay, so let me give you a brief synopsis. A untalented filmmaker who looks, sounds, and thinks like Brad Jones rented a storage unit.
Hold on really quick.
Dude, you're going to find what I found in the synopsis that pissed me off.
There was two directors for this one. Brad Jones was one of them. Not the real Brad Jones, but the Brad Jones.
The Brad Jones
guy.
lookalike
There was
guy.
two directors anyway. But I can't tell because there's 5 names, but it's obviously 2 people.
No, it's Jason Horton is one of the writer-directors, and then Shannon Ellery Hubble is the other writer-director.
But, wait, hold
Because
on.
if you look... No.
Are you sure it's not Jason Horton Shannon?
Look.
And then Ellery
Editor,
Hubble?
Jason Horton, Shannon Hubble. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
She just apparently Shannon Hubble
all right.
put her middle name in the director credit instead of the editor credit, but No, my beef. Look, my beef with the synopsis on the back was this. So it says, "The apocalypse has arrived. 7 strangers escape a fiery blast that has engulfed the city. Refuge
That
is
you see a lot.
Yeah, refuge is found in an abandoned government building." Let me tell you right now. Okay, there's one thing that these filmmakers tried to do to make this look like an abandoned government building. You're not going to believe me when I tell you what it is, but this is true. Because like I said a minute ago, they rented a storage unit. Like they rented like a storage facility for a weekend. You can see the numbers of the different storage units as they're walking down the hallways of the building.
Yeah, there's like personal padlocks and stuff.
So literally, the only thing that they did to make this seem like a government facility was that they went to, Google, and they Googled biohazard symbol. And then they printed it out on a piece of printer paper, folded it up, and glued the biohazard symbol to one of the doors of a storage unit in the storage facility.
They did that.
That is what they did to make this set, quote, set, seem to be a government building. Okay, that is the degree of laziness that we're dealing with in this movie. And a lot of the things we're going to say in the next, 20 minutes or however long this goes are just going to be the same shit that we said about Surviving the Outbreak, because it's basically the same movie. It's really not that different. It's the same shit. It's people sitting and standing. They go from being in a boring room for 20 minutes, and then they run down a hallway from some, really half-assed zombies, and then they end up in an even more boring room. Dude, it is bad.
Can I make a note about the storage facility?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. Look, this is just some free advice to any young aspiring filmmakers out there who want to make a horror film or any film. Please write within your means. If you have a script that takes place in an underground, what was it called? Underground biohazard facility.
Let me read this piece
government
of shit.
Facility.
No,
It doesn't matter.
Jonathan, it's
okay. What?
Refuge is found in an abandoned government building.
Okay, look, if you're an aspiring filmmaker and you want to write a movie that takes place in an abandoned underground government building, save that script for when you have money. Please, don't get a storage unit. Don't try to pass that off as an underground government base. Please don't do it. Can we, what happened to horror movies that take place in a house? Can you just, I kind of miss Surviving the Outbreak, because at least it knew what it was. At least it knew I'm a shitty zombie movie and we're taking place in my director's house. At least the movie had that. It wasn't too ambitious. It was comfortable with its budget, and it didn't think too far outside of that, because it shouldn't have. Now you have this shit where I'm looking at someone's storage locker and I'm waiting for any moment some asshole to ruin the shot by walking up to their storage locker with a cart to unload it. There's a scene where there's boxes.
Yeah.
There's literally the director's attic boxes from his storage unit. Just there,
Well, yeah, I mean, there's inexplicable shots. So at the beginning of the movie, they try to create the impression of the apocalypse happening by just showing shots of city buildings with a shitty orange filter over them. But then they transition into the storage unit, and there's literally there are inexplicable shots of just boxes stacked up. Because it's almost like the director was well, I'm in this storage facility and we found this stack of boxes. Let's shoot it and insert it randomly into this scene.
Now I will I will say this to differentiate itself a little bit from other movies we've watched recently, which is I think this movie was trying, and I do appreciate that. There were some ambitious shots that this movie was attempting and honestly failed to complete, especially during this very small action sequence in the middle of the movie where they're transitioning from one empty room to another empty room that is even more boring than the previous empty room. But there was some good, I mean, it wasn't good, but there was some, decent, oh, I see what you're trying to do and failing at. A for effort moments in that. The roundhouse kick to the face and the zombie. There was some stuff like that where I'm like, well, it wanted to be good.
Yeah, there were a few shots there were a few shots I can recall where I was obviously there's somebody involved in this production who has some kind of sense of what looks good and competent.
Yeah, but this guy watched the Zack Snyder Dawn of the Dead, but really loved the original Day of the Dead, and wanted to do that in their storage unit.
Yeah, but it's so much of the stuff that they attempt to do just falls flat. So I mean,
well,
I'm not
all of it does. Don't say so much. All of it.
Well, I mean, I was just gonna give the example of this movie does try to establish romantic relationships between some of the characters, but it's the most misguided, awkward attempt to do that I've ever seen. Sort of the kinky haired slacker guy with the long nose ends up making out with one of the women in one of the most uncomfortable love scenes ever, and then she becomes a zombie and gets killed by a kinky haired guy. But the scene prior to that with the kissing, I mean, it was the antithesis of generating a romantic mood. I mean, it was kind of it was almost the director was well, we are trying to make this a conventional film with characters who get into romantic relationships. So I'm just going to take this stock character and I'm going to intermingle him with this stock female character and we'll have a romance. It didn't play out the way that anybody in the production anticipated, I don't think.
Well, when the first half of your movie is just people arguing in a room, and then you're trying to suddenly tell me that in the midst of everyone yelling fuck you throughout the first 30 to 40 minutes, to go from that to, oh, by the way, during people yelling at each other, these two happen to fall in love. I mean, it just doesn't work.
Well, it didn't help that through the middle part of the movie we were just ended up getting into some stupid argument about something, and that had nothing to do with the movie, and just tuned out for half an hour, and then suddenly these characters who have no chemistry were making out. That happened, but yes, I wanted to. I love it that you mentioned it because I wanted to bring up one of my favorite apocalyptic movie tropes is the people trapped in a room yelling fuck you to each other, because there was I mean, I pride myself on things like this. I know this is kind of pathetic, but I was at the beginning of the scene where everybody was trapped in the initial storage facility room and they all started shouting at each other, I was these characters are going to yell fuck it to each other for the next minute. And then we counted 8 F words in the next minute, because this is the scene where all the characters are mad at each other and they're going to yell fuck.
Well, yeah, it's
and they did.
Fuck you, man. No, fuck you.
Fuck you.
No, fuck. We need to keep level heads here, guys. No, fuck you.
Yeah. Yeah, so there was the shouting fuck you scene. Okay, and then shortly after that...
That wasn't a scene, dude. That was that continued.
And
that was a sequence.
That was a sequence.
That was like a 30-minute. That was an act. That was the first act of the movie, and arguably the second act of the film. Except the second act took place in a different room.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm like formulating I'm formulating another topic for another podcast about like when like the word fuck replaces actual dialogue. But anyways, I was gonna like comment also. So there's that. Yes, there's the standard people shouting profanities at each other scene that happens, and then there's like the awkward attempt at a romance later in the movie, and then there's like. One of the things that is just like most depressing and sad about this was like the absolute like pathetic unscariness of the zombie horde that gets into the storage facility.
Dude, they're the most unscary, unconvincing zombies.
Let me tell you this, like so earlier, like in the evening before we watched any movies, Jonathan introduced me to this like strange Asian game, PS2 or PS3, right? It was a PS3 game.
It's a Deadly Premonition.
Okay, a PS3 game called Deadly Premonition, but like basically he kind of like warmed me up before we started playing it by saying like the zombies in it are ridiculous and they're not scary at all. And like okay, and they weren't when they finally came into the game, they weren't. But then we watched Rise of the Undead, and the zombie horde showed up. And I was like, this is so pathetic that this makes the Deadly Premonition zombies, like, just seem, like, horrifying. Because, like, literally, like, zombie, like, okay, so you get, the shuffling. They weren't the running, like the crazy, like, running, rage-filled zombies. They were, like, the shuffling zombies. But, like, these zombies were, like, shuffling even slower than your average shuffling zombie. And, like...
Well, and they were just so obviously,
they were so,
like the director's friends.
Yeah, there was such a lack of enthusiasm on the part of the actors playing the zombies that it generated zero horror, zero suspense, zero excitement, zero thrill.
I will say, the Phil Collins zombie guy was good.
Yes, the Phil Collins zombie was cool,
good.
But
and
honestly...
there was a zombie girl that was doing alright, but the other ones were just, like, trash.
Dude, I'm telling you right now, I feel like the movie would have been scarier and more tense if they hadn't any zombies in it at all. Like, that was pitiful. I mean, that was kind of the low point of the movie for me when the zombies showed up. Because I was like, they just, like, preceded this zombie horde attack with a scene of people shouting the F word at each other in a storage unit for like half an hour. And then this is like what they were building up to. Like, if these are how unthreatening the zombies are, then everybody should just go outside and just run away from them because they can't even like walk properly. Like, the zombies could barely move.
Well, the zombies are completely taken care of like halfway through.
Right.
With like a chain link fence gate thing. Like, they're done with, and then there's no more zombies.
Oh.
Well, I mean, there is zombies when like one of them is bitten, but like, and then turns later, but there's no more zombie horde.
And that like ended up with like a scene that almost exactly replicated like the one scene in Surviving the Outbreak that tried not to be catatonic, which was like cool black guy like getting triggered and then having to like kill his friend because she was turning into a zombie. The same scene happens in this movie,
all
and
these
it's
movies
still as boring. Well, because like it was initially done in Dawn of the Dead, because like the balding like Graham guy gets infected and then he has to be shot by his friend when he becomes a zombie, and that scene was effective. And ever since then, these zombie flicks want to rip off that scene, and they think that they can make it emotionally like heart-rendering without developing interesting or relatable characters beforehand. You can't do that. If we don't care about your characters, I don't care if one of them is turning into a zombie and has to be shot. Let them all get shot because they're not interesting, and the movie's going to be better once they're dead.
Well, this movie didn't even have, like, the decency to have, like, a funny I'm turning into a zombie, get away from me scene, like, from Surviving the Outbreak. Like, do you remember the other one where it was ripping off, oh, God, I came, 28 Days Later, and, like, the dad was laying there turning into a zombie, and he's, like, telling his young, like, 10-year-old daughter to run away, and then she just is like, okay, and then runs across around the corner. That was funny.
That was unintentionally funny.
Well, yeah, but, like, this movie didn't even have
this
that.
didn't even do that.
No, but you know what this movie had? Imagine if the black smoke monster in Lost. Imagine if that was a terrible, like, video FX of water mixed with lightning chasing people around a storage facility. So, like, yeah, I know the black smoke monster doesn't really stand up now. Like, Lost has been out for a while. The visual effects are bad now, but the black smoke monster is like the new Avengers movies special effects compared to whatever was chasing these characters, because, like you said, because it literally was just a water video filter mixed with lightning in the form of a cloud, and it was chasing these characters around, and you were like, oh, I think maybe that's like fumes or maybe that's radiation. I'm like, no, why is he swinging the axe at it? I'm like, that's not fumes or radiation. That's supposed to be like a creature. And then they're running away from it down the hall and still swinging at it. And then I think we both had the realization of like, oh, that's supposed to be a monster. And then they never explain what it is.
I don't even know where that came from.
Yeah, like all of a sudden it just shows up after the zombies are taken care of, and
it's almost like the filmmakers at the end of the shoot, they were like, you know, this zombie thing has been done so much, let's just like throw some other like random threat into this, and maybe it'll be more interesting than the zombies, which were just played by like 10 of our friends who couldn't even like muster up the enthusiasm to be like good zombies. So let's just throw in this water smoke effect and...
Well, what did anyone ever mention or try to explain what the water lightning smoke effect was?
No.
Like, what was
Nobody talked about it or
like
had a
the
conversation.
biggest mystery, like, of any of the movies we've watched is like, and if you've seen it, please to comment, what is it?
You know what I think it might be? It might be the director who's like trying to throw in like ambiguity into his movie so that people don't just automatically conclude that it's a worthless piece of shit. He's like, hey, I'm gonna throw in this like confusing thing at the end with like a smoke water monster that nobody will be able to understand, and that's gonna like spark like debate among the stoners who are watching this about whether or not this movie has like some like underlying message. Maybe that's what it was, but you know,
I don't know what it was, but it wasn't good.
It looked bad, and
it
wasn't effective. It wasn't scary. It didn't make any sense, and I don't really care why the director threw it in, because at that point, when we had already been watching an hour of shit, you know, there's nothing you could do to redeem your movie anyways.
Well, it's such a weird thing to throw in, because it's like, first, okay, people are yelling at each other, but then, like, zombies is the threat. Okay, zombies are taken care of. Now there's, like, you know, the water electricity monster that's floating. And then that's taken care of. And then we go back to, like, the zombie threat of people are bitten and are killing each other. And then there's no threat, and people are just yelling at each other. And then somehow a bunch of them die because of the smoke monster who comes back. And then that disappears, and then only redhead dude is left, and then he leaves the building. So, You know, this isn't like Lost where I'm like, oh, I don't need to know why the giant statue was there, or I don't really need to know exactly what the black smog monster was, which we kind of figured out, but it's not like that where it's like, oh, you know, what's in the box, as J.J. Abrams says. No, this is like, no, what the fuck are you doing, movie? Like, what are you doing?
Well, I mean, I guess if you want to give it like the benefit of the doubt,
No, I don't. But go on.
Was the like smoke water monster thing supposed to be like a representation of like the like pollution that created the zombies? But if that was the case, then why was like
why would it kill people on impact?
And why was red hair guy able to walk out and like breathe perfectly clean air if there was some kind of like toxic malevolent substance outside contaminating everything?
Yeah.
Because he just walked out at the end and was like breathing fresh air and it was like bright and sunny and it was like, hey, red hair, annoying, kinky hair guy is gonna be like the future of humanity, apparently.
Well, that won't last long, but yeah, I hope there's a sequel to this. I want to find out what the monster was. And
Dude, there was no monster.
The monster was the electricity water.
Dude, poor man's Brad Jones got bored, and he threw in some cheap effects at the end that weren't zombies because he was getting sick of the zombie element. And he's like, people are just going to be confused by this and think that this movie's more profound than it actually is.
Actually,
that's what it is.
I just came up with a theory. I think what happened was, like, the rest of the movie was supposed to have zombies in it. But what I think happened was, like, I think he shot all of his friends pretending to be zombies, right? And he shot the, like, fuck you stuff at the beginning. And then he, like, went ahead and shot the ending where, like, one of them is bit, and then, all the drama that happens with that. But then I think he realized that his movie actually wasn't really that long enough. And instead of adding more fuck yous, he was like, there needs to be another threat to bridge the gap between the first fuck yous and the last fuck yous. So then but he didn't have enough people to continue to be zombies. So what he did was he added in the video effects of the monster.
Yeah, okay, so, like, you're basically saying, like, he rented the storage facility for, like, a weekend, and he had his buddies there to do the zombie stuff on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And then on Sunday, he was like, oh, shit, I only have, like, 55 minutes of footage. So I have to, like, figure something out on Sunday while we still have the storage facility.
So then he got Glasses Obama guy to, like, wave an axe around to pretend to fight nothing. Yeah, I think that's probably what happened.
I can't believe that, like, a Jonathan conspiracy theory is, like, actually the most likely thing that happened in the creation of this film. Oh, no. I think we should give this ratings now and wrap it up. What do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, there's not really that much more, and we're tired, and it's 3 a.m, so...
No, it's almost 4.
no.
Oh, I give it an no.
You know what? I'm just gonna, like, give it the same. I mean, look, okay. It's slightly better than Surviving the Outbreak. Slightly.
Yeah.
Like, because I think there's, like Jonathan said earlier, there's, like, a few shots that reveal some sort of talent somewhere. And, like, there's an attempt to make things happen. But it just doesn't gel. And the random insertion of bad video effects at the end to try to create some new kind of ambiguous menace didn't work either, so... NA.
Yeah,
NA.
That's about what I think. Yeah, definitely an no. Definitely not the worst thing ever. But definitely don't watch it. And that's about it. I guess I'll throw this back on my shelf and never watch it again.
I mean, you said this guy made something else, right?
Oh, he's still making shit. I looked on his IMDb earlier, and he has, like, a 2020 movie and a new one coming out in the works.
who knows what kind of thing he rented for the weekend and tried to pass off as a government facility for his other projects.
Yeah, could it be a Chuck E. Cheese or what this time?
Hey, that would actually be a cool movie. Imagining a horror movie in a Chuck E. Cheese would be kind of good.
Anyway, all right.
We gotta go.
All right. Bye.
Oh, no.